In the previous video, I made a point not really to go into details about the various Mario Luigi games that could make their way onto the Switch. Despite me being a giant Mario Luigi fan, I made sure not to really mention those. Not because, you've already heard me talk about the series enough and could just infer, but because this topic deserves its own video. There are 7 Mario and Luigi games if you include the remakes, 5 if you remove the remakes, and 6 if you remove the one that is absolutely terrible. Of these 7 games, one of them has already made their way onto the Switch, this being the original Superstar Saga. This just leaves the 2 DS games and, 2 Space DS games, not games that will feature on the 2DS, and the 4 3DS games. Why do I feel like all these games have a decent chance of making their way onto the Switch? Well, it's due to a number of factors really. Of course, there's ones I discussed in the previous video, with Nintendo seeming to be more open to the ideas of relatively simple 3DS ports, mixed with the fact that whenever Mario Luigi Superstar Saga came to the Game Boy Advance NSO app, a lot of people played it, and a lot of people enjoyed it. This resulted in many people who were unfamiliar with the franchise, or that never really had care for it before, becoming fans of the franchise, meaning that as of now, the interest in the Mario Luigi franchise is much higher than it has been since 2019. And when you consider those things, on top of the fact that Nintendo are remaking the very first Mario RPG, I definitely feel like we have a chance here. And that's not me just being optimistic, I feel like there is a genuine chance that we could see 1 or 2 Mario and Luigi games coming onto the Switch. But which ones are the most feasible? Which ones could actually make their way onto the thing in a relatively simple manner without a lot of things having to be changed? Well, that's what we're discussing today, and we might as well start off with the very first one that I think can make its way there. Mario and Luigi Partners in Time is the second game in the Mario and Luigi saga, which is part of the reason why I feel like it could be the first one to make its way onto the Nintendo Switch. With so many new fans being introduced to the first game, it only makes sense for it to follow up with the sequel making its way onto the same system. The only thing holding it back, other than the second screen, which we will get onto later, is the fact that it wasn't really that well critically acclaimed. Personally, I've always liked Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. As a kid, I played it on this R4i card, which, as many of them do, had a time bomb, which meant after a certain amount of time, I could no longer play the games. But one of the games I played on there was Mario Luigi Partners in Time. And though I only made it up to, the weird Wiggler boss thing, I fell in love with the game. And while looking back on it now, yes, it is disappointing in some ways, them not really fulfilling either the alien invasion or the time travel thing to a good enough level, they just did both concepts kind of in a 50% way, I still do find a good amount of enjoyment here. Especially when you consider that this was the game that refined the Mario and Luigi combat in Superstar Saga to bring it to what it is nowadays. Everything in this game feels a lot more connected to the rest of the series, compared to the very first game, which going back to from any other game can be quite difficult thanks to its weird jump system, its weird hammer system, it's weird everything. So if you bothered to watch the previous video, you should understand what is next. That's right, now we're going to talk about what technical issues and what things need to be considered when bringing this game onto a system which only has one screen, and a one screen with a touchscreen at that. Mario and Luigi Partners in Time was developed in a very funny way, if I remember correctly. See, the team didn't exactly know anything about the DS, bar the fact it had 2 screens and 4 buttons. So, for the most part, they focused on the fact that the game had 4 buttons now, giving you 4 characters to control. Since the team had no clue that the bottom screen had touchscreen capabilities, they didn't really use those at all. There is one point in the game, I believe, where you have this picture which shows an alien, and then you rub away some goop and it's like, oh god, there's 2 of them? And that's it. That is all touchscreen is used for, if I can remember. And that means that it's going to be very easy to put this game onto the Switch. Last I checked, every Switch controller features at least 4 face buttons. So yeah, put this thing on there. You have no excuse not to, bar the fact it might not make money. And also the graphics. Yeah, see, the one issue with this game and the next game we'll be talking about is that these 2 games are from the DS, not the 3DS, meaning that graphically they might be a bit more behind than what Nintendo usually does whenever they do re-releases that are just the same game with slightly fresher graphics. Could we be seeing a full-on Partners in Time remake instead? Maybe, but with how poorly the last Mario & Luigi game remake did, I doubt we would be seeing another remake so soon. But all in all, I'd say the chances of this one coming onto the Switch is relatively high, unlike the next game we're talking about. Saying Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story for the Nintendo DS is your favorite of the Mario and Luigi games is just the same as saying that air is your favorite thing to breathe. It is the most basic of basic opinions, but there is a reason for that, and that reason is because Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story for the Nintendo DS is very, very good. From the art, to the music, to the battles, to pretty much everything in the game, all of it is just perfect. And then you get to the touchscreen bits, like the mini-games and the big fights, and, you know, they're a little bit less perfect, but I mean, I like them. Yes, as much as it pains me to say, there is no way that we could see Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story for the Nintendo DS being brought onto the Switch. It is absolutely impossible. To make up for the fact that the previous Mario & Luigi title didn't feature that many elements of the DS, like the touchscreen, the mic, all that jazz, Alpha Dream went out of the way to make sure that everything possible is included, as much as it could be in this title. Bowser's Rose Attack type thing, this being him using his minions, all feature some amount of the touchscreen being used. And by some amount, I mean exclusively feature the touchscreen being used. Pretty much every single minigame you do inside of Bowser's body, once again, requires you to use the touchscreen, like, oh hey, he's eaten something, tap the screen, oh hey, he's sniffed something, you swipe the screen, I hate that one. Like, there's a good number that doesn't use the touchscreen, but the fact that there still is a good number that does really makes me doubt that it could find its way onto the Switch. And that's not even considering the big Bowser battles. Yes, the big battles which would require you to tilt your system to the right. Everybody loves them, everybody was kung fu fighting, but they're a little bit hard to put onto a system which doesn't have a touchscreen, and, well, okay, the Switch does, but which, whenever you're using it in its normal mode, doesn't have touchscreen, and which lacks a microphone. The amount of changes that would have to be done to this game to make it playable on the Switch would far exceed the amount of changes that even the 3DS remake did, which means that at that point Nintendo are just making another Bowser's Inside Story remake, which, with how poorly the last one was received, doesn't seem like a great idea. While I would absolutely love to be proven wrong, I'm just too correct in this. There is no way in hell we're gonna see this playable on the Switch. The only way it would be possible, the only way would be if Nintendo released some sort of the controller thing which had a screen in it. You know, a miniature version of the Wii U gamepad that is able to play DS games, but even then, what about the whole rotating screen thing? That doesn't really play out when one of your screens is like 40 inches big and the other one is a little titchy little thing. See, it's just too difficult. Again, I would love to be proven wrong here. And so that ends us talking about the DS games of the Mario & Luigi franchise. It sucks that 50% of them, and the best 50%, can't be done, but hey, that's still 50% that can be brought on there. That's basically a pass, right? Moving on to the 3DS, the whole hype around the original DS has kind of died down now. People aren't really caring nearly as much about the touchscreen or about the microphone. They mostly just see the 3DS as a strong portable system with the Nintendo things. This is not reflected in the first game we talk about, however, this being Mario and Luigi Dream Team. Mario and Luigi Dream Team follows up Bowser's Inside Story, which is a very hard thing to do. I mean, you just went from perfection, you know, where do you go from there? Perfection again? No, you can't do that. So they made a decent enough game. Being entirely honest with you, despite Dream Team not being my favorite of the series, I actually wanted to come to Switch the most. Why? Because there's just a couple of things, a couple of small adjustments to be made here that would make the game playable. If there's one thing that everybody unanimously agrees to give Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, it's the fact that they're cutting down the tutorials, putting it onto a guidebook players can look at if they need to, and their fast forward feature for cutscenes makes it a lot more fun to replay than Dream Team, which is exactly why I want to see Dream Team brought to the Switch with these two features. If I didn't have to sit through a tutorial every time a new Luigi area is introduced, and if I could fast forward through some of the less interesting cutscenes, I would have a much easier time going back to replay the game. However, this game decides to use the touchscreen a fair amount of the time. Whenever you enter the dream world, on the bottom screen you get to see Luigi's handsome face for the entire time, which, other than being a huge distraction, is also an important gameplay mechanic. Whenever you use one of those Luiginary things, it's Luigi's face you mess with to actually control them. From stretching his mustache, to fiddling with his nose, to fiddling with his nose and mustache again. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of that, but sometimes there's other things. It's frequently used. So what is Nintendo supposed to do here? Unlike some other games' second screens, you can't just have a button switch to it, as there's a fair few moments where you need to mess around with Luigi's face at the same time as moving, or at the very least, have the ability to see where Mario is going when you're moving Luigi's face. So the obvious answer is to put it onto some button controls, but then you're kind of losing some of the charm. No longer are you messing with Luigi's mustache, now you're just pressing the right trigger. It's not nearly as enjoyable, but it is the only conceivable way that it could make its way onto the Switch. If you think that's bad, wait until you hear about the giant battles. Yes, Mario Luigi Dream Team decides, hey, you know that thing that was done in Bowser's Inside Story? What if we did that? But again, and we do it pretty much the same. So yes, there's giant battles once again, and once again, you tilt your system to the side and use the touchscreen. What are we supposed to do here? You can't really put it onto button controls, because then at that point, you're pretty much just playing a normal battle. Okay, well, not at all, but still, having the controls be the exact same as how they normally are would kind of defeat the whole purpose of the giant battles being this weird new thing. So that leaves us with two options. The first one being gyro controls, / the touchscreen on the actual system. You know how in Captain Toad Treasure Tracker there's this annoying blinky thing on the screen that acts as your kind of stylus point, like what it would have been on the Wii U gamepad? Well, just use that system here. Or holding down a button makes it activate, so if you need to, slide something across, make Luigi hit his hammer or anything like that, there you go, you hold down the A button and you move the controller to the right while moving the little gyro pointer. Problem solved. If that idea sounds horrible to you, then how about we use the right stick instead? There's many actions I can think of that could be easily put onto the right stick, like, oh, Luigi's hammer swing. You swing to the left, you swing up, you swing down, all of that can be done with the stick. You do the swirly thing, there you go. The only things that'd be issue would be like, say, the mushroom minigame, because that requires a tap, but even then that could just be moving the stick up in time with the beat, or whatever. So yes, Mario and Luigi Dream Team could very much be ported onto the Switch, and with relative ease. Though some things would be lost in the translation over, overall, I would say that this is a very good choice for Nintendo. Especially if they include the fast forward feature and cut down on some of the tutorial dialogue. Like seriously, just those two things would make it the definitive edition alone. But before we move on to the next title, there is one last thing we need to consider. How would they update the game's looks? See, Mario and Luigi Dream Team uses this weird system, kind of like Paper Mario, where it's 3D backgrounds with 2D characters on it. Personally, I don't really like the look, and that was only exemplified whenever I saw the Superstar Saga remake, which had beautiful 2D backgrounds with the 2D characters on it. It just feels a lot more right to me than this mismatched half and half system. So, am I saying that Nintendo should make every character a 3D model? No. Am I saying that they should change the 3D backgrounds to be 2D pixel art? Also, no. They should just leave the game the way it looks. Of course, they should sprucing up some of the textures, make them a little bit less pixelated to make things a wee bit more smooth and less jagged. With the 3DS's small screens and with its low definition, you could get away with a couple of textures here or there looking kind of blurry, and with the occasional thing off in the background being incredibly jagged to the point where it looks like an N64 game structures, but when you're putting it onto a system like the Switch, you're gonna need to make things that wee bit smoother. But other than those couple touch-ups, for the most part, I say they could leave this game pretty much the same. Same goes for Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Just a couple touch-ups graphically, and there you go, it's looking perfect for the Switch. Speaking of Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, the final of the new Mario & Luigi games. This one is very, very divisive. Hated by Mario & Luigi fans for its blandness, focusing more so on the new Super Mario Bros. Side of Mario rather than the wacky cool side the series was previously known for. Paper Mario fans hate it because all of the Paper Mario stuff is just from Sticker Star. Like, even then we don't even see Kirsty, so it's just like generic Mario things that look like Paper Mario, and I don't hate it. Yeah, that's right, I'm actually a fan of Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Looking aside its bland presentation, there is some pretty good gameplay here. This game, to me at least, is the hardest Mario & Luigi title. Now, that's not saying much, seeing as the Mario & Luigi games aren't exactly the hardest, but still, I struggle with this game sometimes. There's been 1 or 2 times where I've actually game overed here, and I like that. And when you mix that in with all the quality of life changes, these of course being the fast forward feature and the tutorial being squeezed down to this book that you don't have to look at, this game is perfect for Mario & Luigi fans when it comes to the gameplay. More than likely, Nintendo won't put this game onto the Switch. If they're gonna put a Mario & Luigi game on here, it's gonna be Partners in Time or Mario & Luigi Dream Team, or the next one we'll be talking about. It is not going to be this game, which is a shame when you consider that it's very easy to remove all of the second screen stuff here, because all the second screen does in this game is sit there, show you a map, and allow you to select the bros moves without having to press the right bumper a bunch, which, can I just say, for someone who broke their DS's right bumper from pressing it too much, and their 3DS's right bumper from pressing it too much, and also dropping it on there, was a very, very fun, good feature. Everything the second screen does can easily be put onto a button. In fact, most of what the second screen does is already on a button. I may or may not have forgotten about the card battle thingamabob system in this game. Yes, inside the battles you are given these card things and you use them. They can give you health, they can give you buffs, they can deal damage to enemies or only paper enemies or this, that, the other. They do a lot of different things. Main thing is, this is something entirely done on the touchscreen, which I entirely forgot about. Well done past me. Once again, I feel like these could very easily be squeezed onto the one screen, just have them appear in like the bottom left or something. Then when you press a button, they become the main focus of the screen, and from there you can, use them or get rid of them, all that sort of stuff. So sadly, I was wrong. Not everything is already on a button, but the things that aren't can very easily be put onto one. Which, now that I think about it, also includes the guide. Yeah, put that onto a button as well. So the fact that Nintendo would probably focus on the other game, which would be more difficult to bring over, is a bit of a shame. But again, hey, if you're bringing Dream Team onto Switch, you're still bringing another Mario & Luigi game on there, and more than likely giving it that fast forward feature it so desperately needs. Alright, and that's the 5 main Mario & Luigi titles. All that's left now is the 2 remakes. The first remake being the perfect candidate. Yes, compared to all of the other games we've talked about so far, I believe that Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions, or DX, depends on where you're from, is the perfect 3DS Mario & Luigi game, nay, the perfect Mario & Luigi game to make its way onto the Switch. Other than the fact that Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga is already playable on the Switch. Yeah, it's kind of hard to justify this game as much when you've got the original version sitting right there at the same time, but still, trust me, this game's perfect. It's perfect, alright? Firstly, since this game is a remake of a game from a system which didn't have 2 screens, the second screen isn't used for very much here. Shocker there. It is just used to show you a map at all times, which, say it with me now, could be put onto a button, and to allow you to select bros moves without using the right bumper, which again, I'm thankful for, but I can certainly live without it. Although Nintendo would have to revert how the bros moves work back to the old way they did in the original. See, in that game, you press the right bumper a bunch of times instead of switching between Mario and Luigi with the select button and then pressing the right bumper a couple times. So it made sense to use a second screen to allow you to select things faster. But without that, you're gonna have to revert it back to the old system. Which means we can have Luigi in the front again. Yeah, baby. Hey, me again. Who's me? Guy from future. Forgot about the guide on the second screen. Once more. Look, man, it can be put into a button. No one really cares about the guide, alright? You're better off just playing the game and figuring it out yourself, but the guide's there. And it could also be put into a block as well. That's another way they could do things. That's how it was done in a Dream Team, that the guide block was different there. It was this thing that would show up after you failed a boss a number of times, or I think just one time. One is still a number. But yeah, they could put it into block, put it onto button. I don't care. I'm too much of a gamer to use it. Secondly, the graphics. See, this game, unlike the previous 2 Mario & Luigi titles on 3DS, does not use 3D models. Okay, well, it uses one at the very end, but pretty much everywhere else, it is just beautiful 2D sprite work. Meaning for them to put this game onto the Switch, other than making the calculator model a little bit less, sharp around the edges, they have pretty much no work to be done here. The graphics still look fantastic to this day. Slap them onto the Switch, and I don't think anyone would have any problems. Even the new side mode. There's nothing there that really needs to be changed graphically and with the controls. Now the actual gameplay itself sucks terrible bad, but other than that, everything is perfectly fine there as well. And thirdly, the release date of the game. The remake of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga came out after the Switch had released, okay? Nobody cared anymore about the 3DS. The Switch is the new big thing. The Switch is what all the attention goes to, all the sales goes to. While the game still sold well enough, it wasn't a giant hit or anything like that, because the Switch was the main Nintendo thing people were focusing on. So, just like Miitopia, It's a game many people slept on, which means, just like Miitopia, if you bring it onto a system that is new and fresh, well, wouldn't really call it Switch, either of those things at this point, but still, bring it onto the main focus system, you'll have a lot more eyes on it. You'll have a lot more people who never got to experience the game experiencing it. So yes, it is indeed the perfect candidate for a Mario & Luigi game to be slapped onto the Nintendo Switch. It would need the least amount of work done to it, really. But I still wouldn't want it to be on there compared to a lot of the other games. We already have a form of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga playable on the Switch, so I would prefer if a different Mario & Luigi title was able to make its way on there, but hey, any Mario & Luigi title that plays like any one of them past the first game would be more than welcome here. Alright, fine, I'll bring up the bad one. The Bowser's Inside Story remake is one of the worst selling Mario games of all time. It shares many of the same issues that the original Bowser's Inside Story has when it comes to being brought onto the Nintendo Switch. For Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story for the Nintendo DS was something that is impossible to put onto the Switch. This is like super duper impossible. This is illogical. Nintendo would never put this game onto the Switch. They would never light remaster it to slap it on there. Which is exactly why that's what they're gonna do. Look man, I know Nintendo, and by that I mean I don't know Nintendo. What seems like the least logical choice, they will choose, and it apparently will work out well for them, except for when it doesn't. Look man, even this I'd be somewhat happy with, because then at least we're getting another Mario & Luigi, which then opens the door for a new one being made, or a better one being ported. I just want to see something, man. And there you have it. The 6 Mario & Luigi games currently not available on the Switch, discussed to see if they could be put onto the Switch. Talked about from the impossible, to the illogical, to the pretty good choices. Out of all of them, which one would I want to see put onto the Switch most? Well, I gotta say, it's a tie between Partners in Time and Dream Team. Dream Team because if Nintendo bothered their holes to add in the fast forward feature and to cut down on the amount of bloody tutorials, I could see it finally becoming the game that it deserves to be. A good game! But then Partners in Time, I just really enjoy, and it's kind of slept on compared to the rest of Mario & Luigi titles. You'll always hear the original being brought up, because it's the first one. You'll hear Bowser's Inside Story, because it's the best one. Dream Team you'll hear all about, because it's the other best one. Paper Jam you hear about in Infamy, you know, and then Partners in Time just kind of sits there. It's not really talked about. It's like Paper Mario 64 in that aspect, where it's just surrounded by these other ones that get so much more conversation that it kind of gets neglected. Whew. I'd say that's enough of this nonsense then. That is the end of this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, or if you want to come back to it. I don't know why I'd want to come back to it. Maybe just so you can comment that I was right about the way Nintendo would handle converting these games over. Or in like 20 years time you can call me stupid for suggesting they'd ever do anything like this. Speaking of comments, they're also there. Talk about something down there. Preferably Mario & Luigi related. And most importantly, if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. Or if you've watched a couple of my videos, subscribe. Either way, subscribe. You seem to enjoy the content that I'm doing, so yeah, there's going to be more of it at some point, I promise. So you might as well stick around. Alright, bye-bye.